Am I always wearing a headband with my hair up and these big headphones? Why, yes, I am. But today I'm sporting like a super cute 90s-esque jumper sweatshirt. Kind of love it. It's cute. Hey everyone, my name's Michaela, but you can call me Mick, and welcome back to my channel where we dive a little bit deeper. After doing the masterclass on Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo, breaking down the book in its entirety for how the structure lays out, a lot of you actually put some comments saying like, hey, I'd love for you to do a whole series, or like, how would you outline and structure an entire series? And I thought it was a great idea. I'm also outlining and planning for a series right now, so I thought it would be a good time to talk about how to outline for a series using some examples. Before you begin outlining or planning a series, it's important that you already know what outlining method is best for you. I actually just watched a really great YouTube video pretty much with the same title from author Samantha Parks. She did a really great speech on how to find the best outline for you, and I highly recommend watching that video. She said something in there that I really gravitated towards. She said that a good outline is like a trellis and not a funnel. And that's so true, right? The outline is the structure, or she calls it the scaffolding for the story. And so the story is the plants that can like grow on top of our structure and change, but with that support. Whereas a funnel, it's just trying to lead you to one point. And that's not what an outline is. It shouldn't feel restrictive. It should actually support your creativity. I really resonate with that, and I've tried to also get that across on my own channel. I even did a video in the beginning talking about how all outlines are actually the same. And if you haven't watched that, I also recommend going back to watch that video, but I really break down, I think, 3 different types of story structure and show how they all are the same thing. Whatever story structure or outlining method you choose is going to get you in the same place. What's important is making sure that you're picking the right outline structure that works for your brain. Like you sit down, you learn it, and you're like, okay, I understand every point. I know how they all connect, etc. And it's just really you figuring out your own process. And on that note of really finding a process that works for you, I'm excited to share today's video sponsor, Reedsy Learning. Now, I've had this channel for only a couple of months, but I have had an overwhelming amount of support from you guys, and I have been so grateful. With that though, I have been very particular with who I talk with in terms of promoting their products. I've had a lot of people reach out to me, but I don't ever want to promote something that, one, I myself would not use or spend my own money on, and 2, something that I don't believe in or think would actually work for you guys. But when Reedsy Learning reached out, I knew I would love to work with them because I use Reedsy's content all the time, and I think what they have going on, a lot of you will like. There's a lot of planning that goes into writing a book, especially a series. Something that has been helping me plan my project has been Reedsy's How to Write a Novel course. If you're like me, you probably love learning about writing. Personally, I just can't get enough. That's why I majored in it. That's why I'm constantly taking classes, reading everything that I can, and why I started this YouTube channel. Reedsy has a 101-day course that takes you through how to write a novel from beginning to end. Guys, this is chock full of amazing information. You get a mix of live classes with subject matter experts and cool authors, as well as a community hub for everyone who's like in your cohort, which is really fun because you just get to like talk to other people about your project and the process that you're going through. You also have the on-demand classes that you can take on your own time and use it to study and work on your own project. For the last week, I've been taking like the pre-week for this course, and it's been really amazing. They take you through the 5 P's of planning a novel, which is pitch, protagonist, plot, which we're talking about today, point of view, and place. Some definitely just expanded on things that I already knew, but others just allowed me to dive deeper into these parts of my project that I kind of thought I had already figured out, but it allowed me to realize maybe I just need to revisit that and like really think about what place means to me in this book. In the Readsy Learning dashboard, you can actually set up your own book as a project and keep track of your progress. And we all know I love a good tool as well. So you can actually outline your story in here. I can set word count targets. I can also even format my book, which is pretty cool if you are doing a self-publishing route. So if you're like me and you love learning about writing, or you kind of just need that like kickstart to like start your project and have not just all the information that you need, but also the accountability and the community, then I would highly suggest looking into this How to Write a Novel course by Readsy Learning. The next cohort is the one I'm in, and it starts soon, September 2nd. So if you sign up this week, we'll be in the same cohort, so I'll see you on those chat boards. There's also more dates to come during the fall semester and early 2025. So if you can't take the course right now, there will be plenty of other opportunities later. I'll leave all the information you need to know about the course down below, and if you do sign up for the course, let me know. I would love to hear about your experiences. I'll be keeping you all updated about my journey through this course and letting you guys know what I think of it and how it has helped me write my novel. Okay, now back to outlining a series. Once you've figured out how you like to outline or a process that works well for your story, the next question to ask yourself is, how many books are in this series? Some people go into writing a book knowing exactly how many books they want to write within the whole universe or the series. Some people might not realize that they're writing a series until they plan the whole first book or even write the whole first book. And either is okay. I'm still going to show you that whether you know how many books you want in the beginning, or you are at a point where you're realizing, hey, I think I need to write another book, hopefully this method or visualization really can show you how to outline that series, whether you thought of the books beforehand or after. Just like each book needs to follow a story arc, every book in the series creates a story arc. And that's how we're going to look at outlining a series today. I'm a very visual person, so you know I'm going to show those visuals. So with that, we're going to head to my screen. Let's look at just a basic 3-act story structure as we start to break down a trilogy. The basic 3-act story structure is very similar to the 7-plot story structure, but if you watched my video, all outlines are the same. You know that no matter what outlining technique you use, you should be able to break things down into these types of sections, whether it's 3 sections, 4 sections, or 6 acts like the one I use. All outlines are pretty much saying the exact same thing. When we think about structuring something like a trilogy, each book is going to have this arc in it. Every story needs to feel complete, so you will still have a beginning, a middle, and an end. But that means that every book in the trilogy will need to be the beginning, the middle, and the end. Each book is going to correlate with the different sections or acts of an outline. So book 1 is going to be a lot of the setup for the story, even though, of course, everything is still going to happen within this book. 1. All of it is going to be setting us up to launch into these next 2 books. Book 2 in a trilogy is Book 2 in a trilogy is usually going to be centered around conflict of some sort, and that could lead to like a confrontation of the antagonist for the first time. And then book 3 really is your finale. It's the resolution to what your character has been going throughout the entire series. Let's take a look at this in practice, because it's a lot easier to wrap your head around when you can look at it through different books. In the first book for the Shadow and Bone series, we are really getting that setup for the story. We start with Alina finding out that she is Grisha, right? That is the beginning of this book. How we end the book is Mal and Alina are on the run from the Darkling. So throughout book 1, we go through this entire setup in order for Mal and Alina to start going on the run from the Darkling. That would be plot point 1 here. Or we can also look at this through the Save the Cat lens. We can do it all, people. We can do it all. Let's make sure these line up. So Mal and Alina on the run from the Darkling would be our break into 2 section. And it does make sense. For the entirety of book 1, Alina is still kind of in this debate stage of if she belongs in this world or not. She then makes a choice, which propels her into the future of the series. She decides that she wants to run away from the Darkling and that they are going to find the second amplifier. So in book 1, Alina finds out that she is Grisha, that she is magical, when she didn't think that she was. She gets whisked away into the Grisha world. She learns how to use her power. She finds out that she is the chosen one in some aspect, right? And that there are amplifiers out there to help get her power stronger. She learns that the Darkling is trying to get the amplifiers for nefarious reasons, and she decides that she's going to get them herself in order to stop the Darkling. This is all set up for the story because so much happens in the entire series, even though so much still happens in book 1. Alina is in this debate stage in book 1 because she is debating, like, am I cut out for this life? Am I good enough to be a Grisha? Am I good enough to be this chosen one? She really struggles with that. And at the end of book 1, she makes her choice. That pushes her into the rest of the story, kind of pushes her into that fate, that unfamiliar situation where Mal and Alina are on the run from the Darkling. So what happens in book 2? Well, Mal and Alina get the second amplifier. So much happens right in the beginning of this book because we're already in the fun and game section, right? So they get the second amplifier and we are introduced to Nikolai, one of the main characters in this whole series. And quite frankly, the B story. In the beginning of book 2, we are coming up against a ton of obstacles, which is very typical for the fun and game section. The Darkling unleashes the Nichevoye, which is like the darkness creatures, and Alina is struggling to see herself as this chosen one goddess in the eyes of the people. There's a lot of little side plots that are happening in the beginning of book 2. Again, typical for the fun and game section. We then have our midpoint, which is Alina takes hold of the second army. She has to kind of come into her own. This becomes the midpoint because this is usually the part where the main character really figures out what the main central conflict is of the whole story, what their main goal is. And Alina knows now that she needs to take up arms as this ruler figure. And she takes hold of the Second Army, which is the Grisha army. Then at the end of book 2, we have the battle at Os Alta between Grisha and the Darkling. So this is happening with like the bad guys are closing in. We have an all is lost moment at this battle at Os Alta between the Grisha and the Darkling. And the very last thing that they leave us with is Alina has no power. That's the last thing that they leave us with in book 2. Alina tries to sacrifice herself in this battle at Os Alta with the Darkling. She does not end up dying. Her and her buddies do end up escaping into these underground tunnels where these religious fanatics have fled to, but Alina has no power. And that is where we start book 3, because it is the dark night of the soul. You see how that kind of lines up? Alina has no power. That is a big deal. It's a scary deal for her. She has no power, and not only that, her and her crew are stuck underground in this basically religious commune that they had to seek refuge in. But it's getting a little precarious, right? So that's how we start book 3 at the Dark Night of the Soul. We then have the finale where, of course, Alina sacrifices herself to save Ravka. If you've read the books, you know really what that means, but that's where we end. There's finally a giant fight between the Darkling and Alina, a proper fight. It's the biggest showdown. And then Alina sacrifices herself to save Ravka. Oh, guys, I didn't even put all the little books up here. I got carried away in talking. Hopefully this makes sense. And hopefully this still makes sense if you haven't read the books. Highly recommend reading them, especially because I did, that Shadow and Bone masterclass. If you want to like look at structure in an example way, this is a great way to do that. And if you did watch those videos, you know that book 1 is a lot more than just the setup, right? So much happens. But when we look at the series as a whole, it also needs to be able to form some sort of plot structure. When we're talking about a duology, so only 2 books, it's a little bit different, but it still follows the same principle. When you're splitting into 2, that means book 1 will have Act 1 and Act 2 Part 1. Book 2 will have Act 2 Part 2 and Act 3. The main thing to think about in structuring a duology is, where do you put the midpoint? My best suggestion is to end book 1 with the midpoint, because that's usually a really big build-up to something happening. And then we launch into the fallout from that into book 2. When we're thinking of 4 books, it gets a little bit trickier. Book 1 is really going to just be the hook and the inciting incident. If we're looking at book 2, it's going to be plot point 1, as well as the rising action, and end with the midpoint. Book 3 is going to be plot point 2 and like leading up to the climax. So in Save the Cat, this would really be a lot of that bad stuff. And if you've ever read a 4-part book series, book 3 is it's sad. It's all the bad guys closing in. It's the dark night of the soul. It's where things get really bad for our main character before they can get better. And then book 4 is going to mainly cover just that climactic event that we have been waiting for the entire series, and then the resolution for our characters. So anytime you're structuring a series, no matter how many books, I encourage you to kind of look at it this way from a visual perspective. You can do it with something like the 3-act story structure. You can do it with Save the Cat. It all goes back to what outlining process makes the most sense to you, and then trying to visually break it up and figure out what plot points fit into which book. Guys, I forgot to film an outro, so I guess you guys can watch me edit here, but thank you all for watching. Can't wait to talk more about books and my own project in the next video. Bye!